Okay, very good. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Sorry for being late. I had some technical difficulties as usual. Okay, I just got to get a couple things ready here. Hello, do you see me at all streaming? Okay, because I don't see any. It says no viewers. And I don't see any of that, unfortunately. So that's not helpful. Oh, right side. Where's that? Oh, yeah. Uh, stop sharing. There we go. Okay. Okay. Got it, guys. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for waiting for me. Some more technical difficulties as usual. Get my headphones in here. I've had a couple hard times viewing things on my screen and also responding to your comments because I want to see your comments, which is why I'm doing this. So I hope everybody's doing well tonight. So I'm trying to get to my actual stream here. Okay, here we go.
Stop doing this. Let me show the biggest.
All right, so I can finally see what's going on here. So thank you, everybody, for being patient with me. So yeah, I got a lot of questions here regarding the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young thing. So who's my favorite member, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young? I dislike them all equally. Actually, no, I love those guys, and it's funny that I'm having a good time doing this because I'm finding so much humor in their very difficult personalities. I don't know that I could have found that humor when I was younger, but yeah. So again, yeah. So I'm just working on part 4 now. Part 3 I think came out yesterday, and I was working on part 4 a little bit today. So that'll be a good one to have completely done. I can't wait because these get to be kind of laborious after a while, and you just want them to be done. And as many of you know, it's a little bit difficult to listen to this Crosby, Stills and Nash story because it's not all pleasant. In fact, it's a little bit stressful, and that's what some of the feedback has been so far from a lot of you. So hello, everybody. So one of the things, I do have a super chat set up here, so that's one thing you guys can partake in if you like. And one thing I haven't been doing on a lot of my videos is when you guys watch, make sure you subscribe, because my subscriptions are growing slow but sure, but I always want to remind people, and that way you get notified of my video. I actually had a guy this past fall say to me in one of the comments, he said, hey, you're back. Where have you been? I said, I haven't gone anywhere. In fact, I did more videos in 2025 than I've ever done. So that particular guy had no idea. So the notification bell wasn't clicked. And those are all things that will help you make sure that you catch my current stuff. And I believe that if somebody wants to see the series, they're kind of looking for it. So, and it usually takes a good week or so for me to get the next one out. So, all right here. So we got CSN. Will CSN have a part 5? Hell no. We're stopping at 4. And I suppose I could do a wrap up with somebody, but I've not even thought about doing that as of yet. So, yeah. Will you ever do a video on the Incredible String Band? Possibly. I have the band I prefer is the Pentangle. Nothing against the Incredible String Band, but the Pentangle, I mean, those players are top notch. So that you're going to be seeing in the near future, Lord willing. Mark has asked me what I'm drinking. Well, actually, I do have a little bit of bourbon here. And this was a gift from my buddy Dan, Buffalo Trace. So this is, Dan got me this for Christmas. And I just did a guest on a podcast yesterday. And we talked about the Buffalo Springfield. So I brought out the Buffalo Trace. So I've been really busy lately, in addition to the Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young videos I've been doing, which I actually started working on probably in the summertime, maybe even in the spring, just to kind of get the ball rolling. Anyway, Tom Curlis invited me back onto his podcast, his YouTube podcast called Curlis Mania, to discuss Buffalo Springfield. And that just aired live yesterday, I believe. So Curlis Mania is the channel, so you can see us discuss Buffalo Springfield. So how did I get on that? Well, it was the bourbon, because I was drinking some of the Buffalo Trace bourbon while doing his podcast. So people can match up. Yeah, when I started this channel, I typically have a drink in my hand. Sometimes it's a beer, sometimes it's water, sometimes it's coffee if I'm in the morning doing a video. Occasionally I'll do wine. And I kind of wanted it to be, well, I hope people would use this time to listen to one of my band histories and just kick back and relax a little bit. Maybe put some music on afterwards. So I guess some of you guys do that. I appreciate that. Okay, Gene Clark posts birds. I think that's a request. I actually covered Gene Clark quite, I think, substantially in my bird series. I did a 4-part bird series. That was one of my early multi-part histories. So part 1 of the bird series covers the Gene Clark period, but parts 2, 3, and 4 track his work concurrently with the Byrds through about 1972. So that's a series I'm proud of. I like that one. Pretty Things retrospective would be cool. Yeah, I will be doing a Pretty Things. I actually have a schedule for 2026 halfway completed. I got a bunch of stuff on there. This stuff all shifts around. Things happen whereby, there might be some Beatle news or something that I'll jump on and do kind of some topical video on Beatles AI, or what the latest release is or what the latest release isn't. So that might push back a band history. It's a little bit, my schedule's rather pliable, but I wish I could do more band histories. Those are the ones that take the time. This kind of stuff. That's why I want to do more live streams. I can probably get more information out to you if I could get my technology down, which will come with a little bit of practice. But I'll probably be adding a few more live streams just to kind of fill the gaps where I'm doing the production on the live streams. Favorite Dylan album? I don't have a lot of favorite anythings if you ask me that question, but the album that I grew up with listening to, which is close to my heart, is Blood on the Tracks. So that's an easy one. Nothing too crazy there. Got some Schlitz. Oh, excellent. Schlitz, that's one of my favorites, guys. I'm a Milwaukee guy, so a lot of the Milwaukee beers you'll see me drinking, much to the consternation of many of my followers who are, I guess, beer snobs. Let's see. Would like to see my 45 collection. I actually did one video on 45s once, and it's kind of like a diary. You know, if you go through the 45s, and they tell a story of my very early life, which starts really, my 45 collecting time started at age 3, I guess. So it goes back pretty far. How about doing Booker T and the MGs? Oh, you know, MGs. That is a great suggestion. I think that's the first suggestion I have of those guys. At least the first suggestion in a while. I'm a big fan of Booker T and the MGs, and if you were to ask me what I've listened to in the past 15 years the most, the groups would maybe surprise you. Booker T and the MGs is one of them. And the groups that I've been listening to over the past 15 years more than any other 60s groups, that is, are the ones that are just the, I guess the, I don't want to call them virtuoso players, but it's the more highly regarded instrumentalists. So Booker T and the MGs would fall under that category, as would the Pentangle. Ever heard of the Schlitz jingle with Steely Dan? Yes, I have heard of that. That came through when that was on the internet, going viral there for a while. Yeah, I'm surprised they did that. But you gotta start somewhere, right? Best Music Channel, thank you. Thank you for that. Delmo Fritz, I appreciate that. Mothers of Invention, and that's a tough one for me. I'm not a big fan of Zappa. And not that I have respect for him and his music and the band that actually is the Mothers of Invention. It's not just one guy. That's one of the problems with people like that. All the credit goes to one person. So if I were to do a video on them, I would probably spread out the praise a little bit. Dan Wine, thank you for thank you for that contribution. And Dan reads my Substack account. So many of you may not know, I started a Substack account where I post articles, and I've been leaving some links for that, but you can find Pop Goes the 60s on Substack. I've got a new posting that I'm going to kind of wait to. It's going to go along with a video that comes out in a week or two, so I've got to wait on that a bit. Soft Machine are criminally underappreciated. I mean, some people would say they're criminally overappreciated. I have, in my circle of friends, they absolutely fucking hate the Soft Machine. You know, they really do. And it's, you know, there's some of that British stuff, you know, the Toy Town period, and some of that very cheeky stuff rubs some people the wrong way. So you get some real big pushback from that, which I hear as well. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't cover them. I mean, I kind of like going into groups that people hate because there's something to uncover there. Why would somebody hate them? I'm trying to think of who have I done that people kind of hate. Not quite sure. I've done quite a variety, but you get people that hate everything. So it doesn't matter what I do, somebody's going to hate it. Doesn't matter what I do. What did MG stand for? Memphis Group. How about Captain Beefheart? Well, he's another one. He's another guy that I almost said I have respect for. I don't know that I do. I like some of his stuff. It's an acquired taste, I guess. I find Beefheart the most... I don't know how they can play so out of tune and make it work. I really don't know how they do that. That in itself may justify a video. Are you and John Heaton planning doing another album discussion soon? John and I haven't discussed it lately. So for those of you who are fans of John Heaton's channel, John and I have done collaborations going back for a few years, and typically we always do a Beatles solo album. And we haven't. The last one we did, I believe, was it Mind Games? Or was it Living in the Material World? We were kind of on 1973 for a while there. And I don't know if I'm going to do another one. Maybe we'll do another one that won't be a Beatles solo album. I don't know that I have a lot to add. I mean, here's the thing about Beatles solo albums. Most people know that I'm rather harsh on them. In other words, if you were to ask me, what do you listen to of their solo stuff? So in the 70s period, I listened to about 25% of the John, Paul, and George's stuff. 75% of their stuff I don't really listen to. So basically, I make playlists. I've got two for each. So one is like a greatest hits. So through the years, I'd have friends of mine say, hey, can you burn me something of McCartney, greatest hits? Yeah, sure, I can do that. But have you heard some of his deep cuts? No, I haven't. Well, let me make you a CD of that. So that's kind of how I started my playlists. And of the three guys, I don't listen to Ringo much, really, at all. But of the John, Paul, and George, I listen to George the most. But when I review one of their albums, people lose their shit because I dare to say something negative about John Lennon sometime in New York City. Would you consider a 10 Years After history? I would consider it. Yeah, that is one of the few bands from start to finish, they had no members change in that band. I'm not as blues-based. I like the first couple albums I don't like as much because of that. Not a huge fan of theirs, but I do appreciate them. How about doing Traffic? Well, yeah, I would love to do Traffic. I will do Traffic. I can't see how I wouldn't do Traffic. That's one of the bands I've always loved. Winward's a monster. Some very good players. I'm a big fan of Chris Wood. Their story's interesting too. Start, stop, supergroup this, supergroup that. It all gets a little bit tiresome, but when you can consolidate the music into something. That's why I love, it's one of the few things about technology I really like are the ability to make your own playlists. So Traffic is one of those things. Okay. Quicksilver Messenger Service. So we got a lot of hippie bands here. Nobody's asking about Kenny Rogers in the first edition. Traffic would be great. Okay. Ethan Alexanian. Hey, Ethan, how are you? Good to hear from you. So it's good to hear. I do these so infrequently. I mean, sometimes I don't. This is the only time I talk to these people. Good to hear from you, Ethan. You and I have some business to discuss. Is there anything you could add to a Doors profile? I like how you phrased that question because I think the way I approach these, I guess you call them documentaries, is to give a little bit of a different perspective. Typically, the thing that's been somewhat easy for me and also difficult for me at the same time, is the fact that on YouTube you have this. Most of what's dedicated to bands on YouTube is the love for these bands. And I had a hard time not breaking in. I just kind of did my own thing, but I've got negative things to say about the Doors as well. So once you say one negative thing and 9 positive things, some fans only hear that one negative thing and they dismiss you outright. So that happens to me a lot. I shouldn't say a lot, occasionally. You say one thing, oh my God, you've lost all credibility with me. And I don't think my channel is for those people. So the Doors. I started doing some research on the Doors. Just to tell you how far back my research goes. I started researching the Doors. This was in what year? Like 2012. So I was on the beach in Mexico and I had John Densmore's new book. I think it was Densmore's book. And I'm taking notes. Why I was taking notes, I don't know why. For what purpose? At the time, I didn't know why. But I still have all those notes. So yeah, I'm going to make something of those notes. And I'm interested. I mean, nobody else sounds like the Doors. They're a major player. And if I couldn't add anything to the Doors profile, then shame on me. Let's see here. Paul's Secret Fireman's recordings. Yeah, somebody's those aren't bad. I'm not really if I want to go into that kind of music, McCartney's not the guy I turn to. Let's see, Harry's Music Room. I was just watching your CSM part 3 when I got the notification. Oh, very good. Big vote for Beefheart. It's not all dissonant. That's true. It's not. The Ventures. Now there you go. There's something that we're not used to hearing. When are you going to do something on the Ventures? Now that's a group that's just trying to have some kind of talk about a messy discography. Good Lord. So those of you who like the Ventures, and I kind of collected the Ventures a little because I love some of the girl album covers, but I got into the music too. In fact, I would go so far to say as the Ventures 63, 64 recordings are kind of early psychedelic, what they were doing with the guitars, and certainly were influential on Keith Moon. He's one guy that talks about that. I'd love to do the Ventures at some point. I would try to make it not too long-winded. That would be probably a single-parter. Canned Heat, as they're asking. Is that okay? How do you feel about Deadhead culture and how it's grown and evolved from just basic stoner music into a big tent that includes groups and genres like String Cheese Incident, Tedeschi Trucks, etc.? Well, so I've thought about doing the Dead, and I do plan on doing them. A couple things the way I would approach them is this way. Like the other 60s bands I do that get well into the 70s, the focus would still be on the 60s. In the case of the Dead, there's kind of for me anyway, a bit of a cutoff point after American Beauty. Most 60s bands have kind of a changing of the guard when you cross into the new decade. So I think the story of the Dead in the 70s for me would lean a little bit more toward the following that started to grow, because they were the only ones really that came out of the 60s somewhat intact, not compromising with a lot of the new ways, really. I mean, it's kind of interesting. The other thing I would discuss with regard to the Dead is this notion, because there's a lot of people out there, you got the Deadheads, of which I'm not, the people who are really into the live recordings and that kind of thing. And you got somebody who, like myself, likes the historical aspect of the Dead, likes a lot of their early music. I've never seen them live. But I think there's a discussion to be had with regard to appreciating them as a non-Deadhead. There's kind of this elitist feeling amongst some Deadheads, and just rock music in general. You know, if you're not on the bus, so to speak, you just don't get it. I find that condescending. So that would be one of the things I would be discussing, and we would discuss that in length. In other words, here's the question. Can you appreciate the Dead's music as much not being high or stoned as you can being straight? That's the question. And that's the one I will be addressing. Steve Miller's 60s albums would be a good respective too. Yeah, my buddy Paul is really into Steve Miller. You know, and Miller has some Milwaukee connections here. I've seen him live a couple times. Yeah, he actually doesn't get much, he doesn't get talked about much in terms of the San Francisco 60s period. And he was there. Kind of interesting. I second the Ventures. Okay, question mark of the Mysterians. Oh, now we're getting the nitty gritty here. Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Yeah, that one I would probably, what I would like to do is, if I live long enough to do all these videos I want to do, the Blood, Sweat, and Tears would basically be a Blues Project video and then carrying that through. Much like maybe Electric Flag too, those kind of bands that grew into the Bloomfield, Cooper, Stills, the Blood, Sweat, and Tears, all that. There's stories there. They all overlap a little bit, and I think that would be an important one to do. Have I ever done anything on Castanets and Cats? Well, you should check my YouTube channel. Just browse right through it. Actually, no, I have not. Although bubblegum is something I'm not opposed to doing. Let's see here. I would love to hear negative things about Paul McCartney like Spies Like Us. You know, I wouldn't do... Paul McCartney is an interesting character, and I find his fans even more interesting because he's not... I don't find him that interesting now in his music, but everybody's kind of got their time, and I got to give the guy a lot of credit. He really persevered and keeps making music. Not a lot of people can do that, and he's toured. And I think the reason his profile has remained high is because he got back on the road. So, and he's got a lot of really diehard fans, and I always am appreciative of anybody like that that has a strong fan following. So he must be doing something right. Belgium singer Jacques Brel. Wow. That is out of the box. Four Seasons, Genuine Imitation Life Gazette album. Yeah, I've got that album. The Four Seasons, would I do the Four Seasons? I actually had a couple of my early 45s were the Four Seasons, so they do have I have a history with them. And it's interesting how they were able to span the entire decade without really changing their sound a lot. I mean, they got a little psychedelic. That album just mentioned, I guess, was their psychedelic album, but that's something I have to delve into. Eric Schultz was going to ask about groups like The Who and The Doors, but I figure there's been so much commentary on them, it's hard to come up with anything new. I disagree. I mean, I think a lot of the commentary on a lot of these groups is shit. That's why I have a channel. I mean, there are good things out there. I just was watching a Who documentary. I didn't finish it because I'm kind of preparing to work on The Who. And I don't know when that would be, but I'm a Who fan. Who's not? I mean, but yeah, I mean, I think just the way I put these together is just different because I include musical snippets of their songs, which, by the way, is getting harder and harder to do. I hope I have a channel a year from now. So yeah, I mean, so my videos, there's one thing about just repeating everything in the history books that's been said. There's a lot of histories out there that's just a reading of what's in Wikipedia. And a lot of that is actually quite good. The Wikipedia summaries, which are all, by the way, people think, oh, you can change Wikipedia. Oh, no, you can't. That's not how it works. There's tons of citations below. So usually Wikipedia is a very good starting point. But then the way I do it, I go into books. I got a couple books on The Who. I've got to go through that and interviews and things like that. Solo material, criticism, contemporary criticism. And I try to figure out where they fit in. I mean, one of the things with The Who that's going to be interesting to unravel is Lifehouse. I mean, not even Pete Townsend apparently knew what that was about. I don't know how I'm going to describe it, but I will do my best. John Mayall. Yeah, I did, I did the Graham Bond Organization and Cream. That was 2 parts. And people were asking me about John Mayall. I thought, I really should, but I'm not going to do that one right away. I need to get a couple other things done first. And if I did Mayall, I wouldn't go much past the early 70s. I just don't think there's a point. I've actually seen Mayall play a couple times. He's come through my town many times, and I would wander over at Summerfest to check him out. And I've never been a straight blues guy, so I appreciate his stuff that's a little bit not as bluesy. I love his Clapton period quite a bit, actually. Yeah, Peter Green, Mick Taylor. Yeah, that's a lot of ground to cover. Make sure you bring up Nicky Hopkins when you talk about The Who. This is what happens when you have a channel like this. People want you to talk about their pet thing. I'll do an expansive video on a group that's 4 series, and they'll want me to talk about one guy who played on one track. It's like, sorry I didn't mention him, but some things, you just can't mention everything. It would just bog down the video and bog down the story and make it unwatchable. Do you get threatened for using the musical snippets? Also, early prog shows such as Gentle Giant. Gentle Giant was brought up, so I need to have a drink. I like Gentle Giant. My son has been into prog, so he's educating me a bit more on that. As for, I'm losing. Okay, do I get threatened about using snippets? Constantly. This is it's not getting easier. And when I started this channel 6 years ago, I did knowing this going in. But I realized that one thing that would make this channel different is if I did play music. So my initial desire was to take groups that were already somewhat popular from the 60s and play their deep cuts. And I wanted people to learn more than just the hits. And I knew that the making of a band, the value of a band is really how good their deep cuts are. So that's the thing I've been searching my whole life, really. So I knew I had to play those. I can't just try to describe the song Today by Jefferson Airplane. It's very hard to do with words. So you play a little bit of it, and you hope people say, whoa, that sounds different. That sounds really interesting. I think I'm going to check that out. And one of the things that I wanted to achieve with this channel, was to increase activity for the artists. So to bring not just recognition, it's actually brought them some sales. I have people saying, hey, I've spent a lot of money because of your channel. So that's a compliment. And I'm glad that I can at least say that the people that patronize this channel, they not only support the artists, they buy books, they buy physical media, they stream, they do everything. They support these artists in every way possible. And a lot of channels like myself want to do just that, and that's why we want to play the music. And the way it's set up, it's not that YouTube is the culprit. It's not YouTube. They're not publishers of that. It's the actual publishers of the music that are the difficult ones. And there's some of them I think just have kind of a blanket policy that they don't care whether you're promoting their stuff for free. They care that you're playing 10 seconds of something and they're not getting their 1/25th of a penny from it. Because that 1/25th of a penny can add up over time, and these artists aren't making much money streaming. I really don't think it's that, there are a few videos I've done where I've foregone any kind of copyright because I played a lot of music. For example, the Beatle one I did on the rehearsals of the song Something, which I thought is just a fascinating session. So I play so much of the song. That's something I cannot get away with. So all the money goes to the copyright. That's not a fair use claim, in other words. So I don't know where it's all going. There aren't a lot of, that's the problem with the world becoming monopolistic. What other option is there other than YouTube? There are others out there. Very few know about them. And then when those get big, well, then they'll have the same problem over there, I suspect. Okay, back to your comments. We had a donation there. Thank you. I missed who that was. Where do I find it? Okay. Thank you for all your videos. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Can you somehow alphabetize your shows? It would make it easier to look for shows. No, I cannot do that. So the way that works is when you put up a video, they get put up chronologically. So if you view, that's a YouTube question. And right now, they've given us less options. So if you look at anybody's channel, you can type on videos, you can say oldest, newest, most popular. Those are your only choices. I've got 317, I think. That's not a whole lot. The band videos are kind of obvious to see in the thumbnail. Come on. I can't do all the work for you. Come on. Okay. John K. from Steppenwolf has an amazing history and is a really great guy. Well, if I do something, I would be doing Steppenwolf, not John K. He's just a member. That's one of the things that, K he's a great performer. I've seen him as well. John K. and Steppenwolf. And their story, it's pretty straightforward. And that's another group I don't think people really appreciate some of their deeper cuts. They weren't just a one-hit wonder. Well, they technically had 3 top 10 hits. They're not a 3-hit wonder. But, if you went by classic rock radio, which is kind of what the world has become, I don't know how streaming is with their deep cuts at all. I have no idea. I don't listen to streaming too much. Anyway, they'll get a straight shot from me. That's all I can tell you. More Nicky Hopkins. Well, we got some Nicky Hopkins fans out there. Honey Bus, one of the most underrated groups of the 60s. You guys know who the Honey Bus is? Well, Honey Bus was one of those kind of 60s paisley psychedelic pop bands out of, I guess, London. and some very good stuff, kind of like Summer of Love stuff. The only problem is most of their stuff came out a year or two later. So they were late to the game. Had that stuff come out earlier, I think they would have been a bigger deal, and you guys would have heard of them. That is a group I would like to cover, but with bands that had, I think they only had one album. I might do a compilation where I discuss several like bands, like 60s psychedelic stuff from Great Britain. It may not constitute its own video because I wouldn't have too much information on them. But fun stuff to do. Like, for example, I did a video middle of last year on UK Freakbeat, which is kind of a subgenre of psychedelic music, I guess, and that gave me an opportunity to highlight 8 or 9 bands that are just, they didn't even have an album. So it's hard to do a video the way I do them with a group that only maybe had 3 singles. Not that it couldn't be done, but who would win in a fight, the Count 5 versus the Chocolate Watch Band? Well, clearly the Chocolate Watch Band would win that. Come on. He could make a playlist and alphabetize them. I actually have playlists on my channel, so if you they're distinguished. Let's see there. I have like a band history one. I've got a Beatle one. I've got news. I've got shorts. So yeah, I've got quite a few playlists, and I do get asked about that occasionally. And some things I just still haven't got to yet. So shoot here. Go back. Getting distracted. All right. Viva Vanilla, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure. I don't say this on every video just because it even bores me, but don't forget to subscribe. Make sure to sit through a couple ads. This is one thing I've been saying on a couple of videos that I do after I do a long band history series, and that if you have other YouTubers out there that you really like and you want to support, and you don't want to do Patreon or something and sit through some of their ads. I mean, that is the way we really make our most money. And there's these ad blockers and things now that people can opt in for, and that hurts us. So those are things that really help, really help us do content and create content. For example, I don't have it here. I've got books laying here around here. They're not in arm's length, but a lot of the money that I get, I buy books. I sometimes buy some more records depending if I don't have something. I buy subscriptions. I do some downloads of books. So, books I still prefer to buy over reading something online. It's just easier for me to hold something in my hand. I can read in bed, or I can sit on the beach easily enough and not have to borrow with a reader that needs to be charged. All right. Matt, the next in line, this is from Lee Sana. The next in line that should get remixed treatment is Grow Old With Me with George Martin's orchestra. I think he's being joking there. Yeah, we have a lot of talk about the Beatles lately, and this being the end of the line, the bottom of the barrel, all that kind of stuff. We'll see. I mean, when they hired the new CEO 5-6 months ago, I thought, well, seems to me the easiest thing would be to just release that Rubber Soul box set. Everybody would love the new CEO. I still think that can happen, but they're keeping mum on all that. Matt, I love your videos. Thank you. This is Thomas Guild. I hope you will get to the New York sound of the Velvet Underground. I'll need a drink for that one too. I will definitely do the Velvet Underground. One of the groups that, they've always got tons of attention starting in the 80s. The Warhol connection is obviously huge. And, with Lou Reed being a big deal also in the 70s and having a lot of fans, the Velvet Underground has gotten plenty of play. But again, has the story been told succinctly? I got the book by Victor Bacchus, which is very good, a biography on them that came out in the 90s, I believe. So yeah, let's plan on them. Put them on the calendar. I don't have them on. Gotta admit, I don't have them on the actual calendar. So my 2026 calendar right now is pretty much filled up through July, and I end up moving stuff around. And I mean, I could add anything in really, or take anything out. But once I start doing and getting, once I start putting the ink to paper, so to speak, I start writing the outline. That's when I follow through. I pretty much want to keep going. Would you cover the animals? Yes, I sure would. I certainly would. So, I mean, the English groups, that British invasion period, who have I done so far? I've done, what have I done? Well, I've done the zombies. I did Peter and Gordon. I've done Chad and Jeremy. I started to do the Beatles, reviewing the Beatles albums, starting with their first album. I do, the Kinks are on my schedule. I'm trying to get a guest coming onto my channel to discuss them soon. And yeah, the Kinks are excellent. Also, Donovan is one that's coming up in 2026. I think I'm safe in saying that. Now I'm going to have to follow through with it. Thanks for the book recommendations. I've gotten a few. Very good. Do you not get paid unless we watch the whole commercial? That's a very good question. Some of the commercials are like 2 minutes long. I mean, I've sat through commercials. I'm like, when is this going to end? You know, so you do get paid sitting through parts of them. The longer ones, yes. The 10, 15-second ones, you got to see the whole thing, and that's obviously a small amount. But you know, we used to have the option. I used to have the option as to where I place the ads, pre-roll, post-roll. YouTube took some of those things away from us, and I don't know. Well, they said it was because they didn't want to have us, the YouTuber, have too much control over that. What YouTube is trying to do is keep people on the platform. So it seemed like I made less money with that decision. If I make less money, YouTube makes less money. But I think the idea for them is at least to keep people on the platform. So I'm not quite sure how all that works, and too busy making these videos. I really can't stand dealing with any of that stuff, but you know, it's a necessary evil, I'm afraid. Holly's with Graham Nash, yes. Would you cover The Move? Probably gets too much into the 70s, though. Well, The Move, you know, they started, you know, they're kind of those London club groups that started. I've had a few requests on The Move over the years. That's one of those groups. I don't know that I would do a whole video on them. I might talk about them with, I mean, people have asked me, will you do Electric Light Orchestra? No, I won't be doing them. You can see how you'd want to talk about the ELO if you did The Move. For example, I did a 3-part series on Jefferson Airplane, and they basically broke up in 72, not unlike lots of 60s bands. But I did talk about the immediate solo stuff that followed, the branching off of the band members, and kind of a brief overview of Jefferson Starship. And that kind of ended it, you know. So I'm going to keep with that format, not going into the 70s too much, which makes a Who video a little bit difficult for me. Well, not too difficult. The Who didn't have a lot of albums in the 70s, really. I mean, I think there may be more solo albums than Who albums in the 70s. There's a lot of compilations of older stuff. So the Who stuff, I'm really interested in everything up to about Quadrophenia. So we'll see how that goes. I'm getting behind here in my comments. Have you covered Hot Tuna? No, but they got mentioned in the Jefferson Airplane series, and I played one of Yorma's classic tracks off of Qua, by the way. Labels, yeah. Joseph Blue, I pay for ad-free watching. Well, that is your prerogative. Yeah, I can see that. I can see why you'd like that. Groovy Lisa, I enjoy your channel very much. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. Is there anything like Mark Lewison's Beatles recording sessions that could be any interest to Beatle fans, or have we already reached peak Beatles? Well, let me answer that in a way that I was thinking of lately. So I did a video on this Beatle AI stuff that's coming out. The AI slop, as the term is now called. We have the Beatles' new CEO with a completely digital background. Will we see any physical releases again? All these things are kind of floating about. And concurrently, occasionally I'll catch wind of somebody bitching about the fact that Mark Lewison hasn't come out with his volume 2 of his massive Beatles biography. And if ever there was a time when we'll need it, it's in these coming years. An actual book with actual research. So these are the things we need to support him on instead of like bitching about why we're not going to get it because we might die before. I mean, what can you do about that? I mean, that's a horrible way to live. Thinking about all the stuff that you're not going to live and get because you're going to die. Well, if you live a full life, you shouldn't really worry about that. Anyway, I think the Lewison stuff, and there's a lot of great work being done now that it has nothing to do with AI or some great podcasts or some other very good YouTubers. There are articles being written. There are books being written. So talk on the Beatles is far from dead. But as I've been saying for some time now, I think they're becoming more of a niche. And that's not a bad thing. 13th Floor Elevators. Yeah, they could use something. Now that's a band that probably needs a thorough history. Damn it, that just reminds me of something. They actually have an album that never was too that I'd like to work on. Would you ever do Pop Goes the 70s one day? Jim Brendan, is that 53? Okay, so let me answer that. Well, I just did I'm in the middle of a 4-part Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young series. So let me explain that. Let me explain what I'm doing here. So this is a 60s channel. And at the end of every year, going back about, I think, 4 years, I've been doing kind of an escape of the 60s and talking about the 70s a bit. And for example, I've got this massive 70s poster collection. I did that a few years ago. Last year I did my 70s album collection, and just for fun. So this year my 70s excursion was the Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young series. That's not Crosby, Stills, and Nash & Young. What are they, a 60s band or a 70s band? This is one of those things that obviously they bridge the decade, but really started at the last year of the 60s. And everything that they ever did, 99% of all their stuff is in the 70s. So what are they? So to answer people's questions, are you going to do Pop Goes to the 70s? I think I may stick with doing something at the end of the year as a vacation from the 60s for myself and for the fans. But I'm not going to be doing... I've had people request I do 80s bands, 90s bands. That's not likely going to happen anytime soon. Some of the 60s bands I do are usually, they ended in the 60s, so that's an easy one. How far in the 70s do you go? Well, like I mentioned, Jefferson Airplane, obviously they changed to a new band, it's Jefferson Starship, so that I don't feel needs to be done. Although I do get requests for that. Okay. How about the Wrecking Crew? They did a lot of different music. Did they? No, they didn't. They did a lot of the same music. And that's one of the problems I have with the Wrecking Crew. Fine musicians, but just because you can read charts and do things quickly doesn't make you a great player. It doesn't make you a virtuoso. And I just think the Wrecking Crew has been an exercise in name dropping over the last 20 years in these circles. And it's as if they're an actual band. They're not. It's like 250 different musicians, a conglomerate that some play together, some don't. It's really. There was the documentary that came out, and then people were bugging me about that. Did you see the documentary? No, actually, I read the fucking book. And the book was actually a little disappointing because, think of it this way, guys. This band of musicians, retroactively called the Wrecking Crew, played on thousands of tracks. They don't remember anything, barely. You think they remember Some bullshit track on the Classics 4 album? No. They only talk about the hits. And all those stories were kind of already told. I was a little bit disappointed with the book. I eventually did watch the video. My son got the DVD. I did watch that. And yeah, I may do a video on them. It may be a little negative, folks. Sorry. Oh, here we got a Kurt Betcher fan. Yeah, there's a lot of Kurt Betcher fans out there. Millennium Sagittarius. I wouldn't do a video just on Betcher. Betcher's best work was not with the Sagittarius or Millennium. He's best, in my opinion, as a supporting guy. Whether it's with the association, he had other small contributions here and there, quite a few, and he kind of bottomed out, drugs and such, unfortunately. Let's see here. Now you get me worked up. Get me worked up here. Dion. Oh, we got a request for Dion, and we got a request a couple down, Vanilla Fudge. Can you get two more different requests? Well, the Vanilla Fudge, who I just saw live about a year and a half ago in town here, and not too many bands, not too many 60s bands can claim 3 out of the 4 original members. Vanilla Fudge can do that. They put on a good show. They're still touring, so if you get a chance, check them out. The Blues Magoos were interesting. Yes, Chris Donaldson, sorry. Blues Magoos, yeah, that's a group I do want to cover. Nobody talks about them much, although I've had some requests for them. Okay. I'm glad to pay my cable provider $2.99 a month to avoid struggling through the commercials. Thanks a lot. All right. Okay, we've got somebody thanking me here. Is one of my Patreon supporters here, Casanova. Yes, thank you. Would you ever do it, Jan and Dean? So my Patreon supporters, I give a little bit more credence to, and when it comes to a few requests, I usually move those up on the list a little bit more. I've had quite a few requests for Jan and Dean, actually. And I could see doing one of them. That would be a single one. That wouldn't be too long of one. I have collected a lot of their stuff. I had a fan, a follower of this channel, send me the whole catalog, so I thank him for that. So I'm off to a good start if I want to do Jan and Dean. A couple interesting, interesting story, those last couple albums and the accident and everything. Okay. Klaatu. Harry Nilsson. Okay, Nilsson. Yeah, I've made some promises about Nilsson. That's one. The reason I am a little bit shy of doing Nilsson, I will do it, but I don't like dealing with his 70s stuff much. I prefer his 60s stuff by a country mile. So I will have to address the 70s stuff, but it might get a little short shrift. Not just because, he loses his mojo, obviously, loses his voice. He went down the tubes, and there's not a whole lot to discuss of his music, I don't think. I mean, some people are, if I'm up against super huge fans, what can you do? I can only do what I can do. So, has the Blues Project been covered? No, not yet. I'd love to do them. The original jam band, as it's called, before the Grateful Dead. That's who Garcia aspired to be. It was the Blues Project. Spirit. Well, easily done. That's been done. So go to my channel, Pop Goes the 60s, and you will find it. Iron Butterfly. There you go. Probably will do Steppenwolf before Iron Butterfly. Two groups cut out of somewhat of the same cloth, being kind of that American kind of late 60s hard rock period that became so popular on the live circuit. Yes. Third Ear Band. I don't even know them. Guess we won't be doing them. Yoko Ono. Yeah, I've got some topics of Yoko Ono I may do. Those are always tricky topics. Well, at least when I do them, they are. Because You know, we're in a period now. The John Lennon worshippers out there have adopted Yoko Ono as kind of, you know, the second deity in the Trinity, I guess. And if you say anything about bad about Yoko Ono or negative, even if it's critical, well, somehow you're a misogynist or racist, which I've been called because of Yoko Ono on this channel in the comment section. And those are the people that I want to speak to. I mean, what are you gonna say to those people? I mean, as if Yoko Ono was beyond criticism. Give me a fucking break. I would like to do, in fact, it's on my schedule. Let's put it that way. And I would be going over her career as an artist. Now, the tricky thing about that, and I've had to do a lot of research on art over the years, and if you want to speak with any authority on it, you have to have somewhat of an understanding of art history. So what I find, and the pushback I get from fans in the rock and roll world, they don't often know much about art, so they think everything Yoko Ono did is some kind of profundity. My video, if I ever get around to doing it, will expose that and give reasons why, and bring in top artists to critique her work. She's got some good stuff. I think her music in the 70s is actually quite interesting. So it's not at all anything I do on Yoko Ono is not a hit piece, although some people, small that they are, will only see it for that. I look forward to your videos on the bands I don't hear a lot about. So this is from Harry's Music Room. Yeah, you know, there's one I got on my schedule that I'm not going to tell you because I might not do it. Very obscure band, a favorite of mine. And some I sneak some of these in because if they are favorites of mine, I think they deserve a little more recognition. I'd like to get them out there. But they don't, you know, a lot of people just aren't interested in them. The people that say, hey, I want to hear about bands that I don't know a lot about, some do, but I mean, I don't get a lot of views on those. And that doesn't keep me from doing them. But I want to make sure I kind of spread it around. This channel seems to be broken into two halves, really. My Beatle content is maybe about 45%. So I get, you know, the Beatle people out there, they want all Beatles all the time. They'll just watch my Beatles stuff. I've got viewers that watch everything but the Beatles stuff. And I've got people that just watch the bands they like. So it's kind of all over the map. So I never really know which band is going to do well or not. I mean, I'm surprised. The ones I think that are going to do great, they do all right. The ones I think that aren't going to do much, they go nuts. So what do I know? Neil Sedaka, not in the hall, is a disgrace. I'm a big Neil Sedaka fan. Yeah, the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is kind of, I don't know. They come up in my videos here and there, but okay. Jethro Tull, here's a perfect example of a 70s band. Zeppelin is a 70s band. A lot of these bands started in the 60s, but they really are not 60s bands. The reason why Zeppelin and Tull were such a big deal and got so big in the 70s is because they were so different in 69. That's why. They didn't sound like the 60s. So I'm going to probably leave those groups like that for somebody else to do. I'm a big fan of Jethro Tull. Up through Songs from the Wood. I mean, my buddy Paul's a big Tull fan, and I've been introduced to a lot of their music through him. But, I mean, I've got others to do before them. I don't think I've ever got... I've probably gotten requests to do Zeppelin. But I feel the same thing about Zeppelin. I don't know that there's a need for me to do Zeppelin in the way things are going. People think they've heard everything about Zeppelin. What could I possibly add to it? I mean, I don't know. Don't know. Losing my comments here. I can't find my comments. They dropped off here. Well, I wanted to go about an hour anyway, so I'm coming up on that. I got a lot of great requests today, and generally I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing. I spent 2025, I had some extra time on my hands in 2025, and all that extra time went into this channel. So you saw more content on this channel than I had done in the previous 5 years, I believe. And not sure I'm going to keep up that pace for 2026, but I will certainly keep the quality as high as I can. And I wish I had two of me. I could get a lot more done. And there's a lot of things I'd like to do. I mean, there's all kinds of technical things I need to address. There are, I've got a website. I've got the podcast that I've got. In fact, let me just show this to you. If you hadn't seen, I did another album that never was for Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. So if you go to the part 3 of this series I'm doing in the middle of right now, I have a link to the podcast that I do, which plays my version of this album. And one of the things I may do in 2026 is do more of my albums never were as podcasts, so you can hear everything and download it if you like. That's kind of a fun thing for me to do. Something pretty easy for me to bang out easily, or quickly, I should say. And so that is available for you to see. I'm going to try one last time to get my comments up here. What the hell? Let me just try and screen here. No. No, I'm not able to do that. Well, anyway, so one other thing I wanted to mention before I sign off here. I've been really busy behind the scenes. In addition to this, I was trying to do something easy in December, and this Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young one wasn't quite it. I changed the format of my band histories a little bit for this trip into the 70s, just to make it look a little different and make things a little easier on me. But I've actually been guesting on other podcasts and other YouTube channels lately, namely Tom Curlis. He does Curlis Mania. I appeared recently talking about the band, and just yesterday I appeared on his channel discussing Buffalo Springfield. I've got a couple things coming up here, one with writer James Campion. James has been on my channel. We discussed his book on Hey Jude. That he's got several other books out, and we are going to be discussing Joni Mitchell's album Court and Spark. That's coming up. I'll let you know when that comes out, but that'll probably be in a couple weeks. I'll be doing something with Anthony Rotuno again on John Lennon on that topic, and I'll have a couple guests of my own. I'll have writer Simon Wordsworth, who is a Love and Spoonful writer. He wrote a book on the Love and Spoonful bust, which is a very interesting time in 60s music and the whole drug counterculture. So I will be having him on, and I will have on singer-songwriter Barry Greenfield, a name you may not know, but he's been around a little bit and rubbed shoulders with some heavy hitters, and he's been a fan of my channel. We got to know each other a little bit, and I'm going to feature some of his music. And he's got a new book out, so why not? It's who you know, right? So look for Barry Greenfield coming soon. And lots of bands coming up. I have some other guests planned, and it's just been really busy really busy month here for me so far, and I'm trying to figure out, we got to get to my next band history. So those I've always got a few in the works. I don't even know which one's going to be next, but and I've got some Beatles stuff coming up that's planned. I would like to get back to the Beatle album reviews, and got some other topics that might be a little bit interesting, a little bit off the beaten path, which I hope you like, and there may be some Substack posts to go along with those. So until then, thank you all for joining here. I'm going to try to do one live stream per month, so you can ask me these questions. I'll have the super chat going, and I will have a drink in my hand, so if I get riled up, you'll have to make allowances. But I guess this is all for the record now. And I do like connecting with the viewers, and I do my best to do all the comments. And my supporters on Patreon, they get all my attention first in the comments section. They're on Patreon. So I'd like to thank them. If you'd like to join Patreon, those links are available. I'll put a link in when this goes up on YouTube after the live stream. And keep tuning in. I really appreciate the views, and keep those subscriptions up. That really helps the algorithm. I know people always say it, but it really is helpful. And I want to keep getting out to people who appreciate this kind of music. So until next time, I appreciate you watching. Thanks.